The Kethari had ruled the Andromeda trade routes for over 3,000 cycles. Their crystalline ships, powered by pure thought and quantum manipulation, had never known defeat. Commander Zoyaxthala stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Harmony, watching the holographic displays with growing unease. "Status report," she commanded, her voice creating soft musical notes in the ship's atmospheric processors. "The Vorthike horde has broken through the outer rim defenses," reported Navigation Officer Peltaris, his normally luminescent skin flickering with stress patterns. "Their bioships are consuming everything in their path. 17 colonies have gone dark in the past rotation." Zyxthala's forearms trembled slightly. The Vorthake were a nightmare made real, a species that had evolved beyond individual consciousness into a collective hunger. Their ships were grown rather than built, massive organic monstrosities that devoured entire worlds to fuel their endless expansion. "What of the Galactic Council's response?" she asked. "The Moltheri have retreated to their home systems. The Zirian Collective has activated their dimensional shields and refuse all communication." "We stand alone, Commander." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle humming of the ship's bioneural networks. The Kethari had always prided themselves on being a peaceful civilization. Their technology was advanced beyond most species' understanding, but it was designed for exploration, trade, and harmony, not war. "Sir," called out communications specialist Veclin from her station. "I'm detecting an automated distress beacon. It's very old. Pre-council era. Put it through." A crackling, primitive signal filled the bridge. The voice that emerged was harsh, guttural, speaking in an ancient dialect that the translation matrix struggled to process. "This is emergency protocol. Any species receiving this transmission, we are Terra's soul. Coordinates follow. If our worlds fall, remember us." "Terra's soul," Zyxthala mused. "I've never heard of such a system." Peltaris was already running searches through the vast Kethari database. "Commander, according to Archive Council records, Terra Sol was marked as a quarantine system approximately 4,000 cycles ago. Classification: Deathworld. Inhabitants: hostile. Status: do not approach under any circumstances." "A Deathworld," Veclin gasped. "But surely no intelligent species could survive on such a planet?" "The records are incomplete," Peltaris continued. "But there are notes about unprecedented aggression and unsuitable for civilized contact. The entire system was blacklisted from all trade routes and marked as off-limits." Zyxthala stared at the star charts, her mind racing. The Vorthake horde was less than 50 cycles away from the Kethari home system. Their peaceful technology, designed for harmony and exploration, was useless against an enemy that existed only to consume and destroy. "Commander," Veclin said softly, "there's more to the beacon. It appears to be some kind of defensive pact. Any species that aids Terra Sol in their time of need will receive the same protection in return. A mutual defense treaty with a quarantined Deathworld species," Zyxthala murmured. "For thousands cycles old." "Sir, the Vorthake scouts have been detected in the Proxima Junction," reported the tactical officer. "At their current speed, they'll reach our outer settlements within 30 cycles." The weight of decision pressed down on Zyxthala's shoulders. Every military strategist in the galaxy had studied the Vorthake horde. Their bioships could regenerate from almost any damage. Their numbers seemed infinite, and they had never been successfully repelled by any known force. The only species that had ever survived contact with them had done so by fleeing immediately. "Commander," Peltaris said quietly, "even if this Terra Sol system still exists, even if its inhabitants are still alive after 4,000 cycles of quarantine, what could a single death world offer against the horde? The archives suggest they were barely space-capable when the quarantine was established." Zyxthala closed her eyes, feeling the gentle pulse of the ship's organic systems around her. The Kethari way was peace, harmony, and the preservation of life. But sometimes, she realized, preserving life required making impossible choices. "Set course for the Terra Sol system," she commanded. "Commander," several officers protested simultaneously. "The Vorthake will destroy everything in their path," she said firmly. "Our traditional weapons are useless against them. Our allies have abandoned us. If we're going to die, We might as well explore every possibility, no matter how remote. But the quarantine protocols are 4,000 cycles old, Zwiexthala interrupted, and written by a council that no longer exists. Besides, we're not making contact. We're answering a distress call. As the Eternal Harmony and its small escort fleet changed course toward the Forbidden System, none of them could have imagined what they would find there. The galaxy had moved on, evolving beyond the primitive conflicts of the ancient era. Most civilizations had developed beyond the need for warfare, becoming peaceful traders and explorers like the Kethari themselves. But Terra Sol had been left behind, quarantined, and forgotten, marked only as a dangerous anomaly to be avoided. What the galaxy had failed to consider was what 4,000 cycles of isolation might do to a species that had already been classified as unprecedented in their aggression. The journey would take 15 cycles, and, with each passing day, the reports from the Rim territories grew worse. The Vorthake were accelerating their advance, their bioships gorging themselves on consumed worlds and growing larger with each victory. Sir, Veclin reported during one of their final approach cycles, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the Terra Sol system. Whatever's there, it's unlike anything in our databases. How massive? Zwiexthala asked. The energy readings are off our scales, Commander. If these readings are accurate, the power generation in that single system exceeds the combined output of the entire Kethari Confederation. Zwiexthala felt a chill run through her crystalline spine. What kind of civilization could generate such incredible amounts of energy? And, more importantly, what were they using it for? As they approached the edge of the Terra Sol system, their sensors began picking up artificial objects. Massive structures that dwarfed even the largest Kethari city ships. Space stations that looked like metal worlds, bristling with technologies that their scanners couldn't identify. Commander, Peltaris whispered, I don't think this species is quarantined because they're dangerous to others anymore. What do you mean? I think they're quarantined because they're dangerous to everyone. The Eternal Harmony crossed into the Terra Sol system just as an automated beacon activated, flooding their communications array with a signal that made their translation matrices work overtime. Unknown vessels, you have entered Terran space. State your business or prepare to be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply. The voice was cold, mechanical, and absolutely without mercy. Zwiexthala realized that her desperate gamble might have led her people not to salvation, but to something far worse than the Vorthake horde. She opened a communication channel, her voice steady despite the terror growing in her hearts. This is Commander Zwiexthala of the Kethari Confederation. We received your ancient beacon and come seeking aid against the Vorthake horde. We invoke the Mutual Defense Pact transmitted 4,000 cycles ago. There was a long silence. Then, slowly, the reply came back, and this time the voice was unmistakably organic, unmistakably alive, and filled with something that made Zwiexthala's blood freeze. The Vorthake horde, you say? How interesting. It's been a very long time since we've had a proper war. Admiral Sarachun stood in the command center of Fortress Alpha, watching the alien ship approach through the massive transparent aluminum viewports. At 97 years old, she had lived through humanity's greatest expansion and had never expected to see another alien species in her lifetime. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, the alien vessel is maintaining position at the edge of the system. They're requesting permission to dock. What's their armament status? Chen asked, her weathered hands clasped behind her back. Minimal, Admiral. Our scans show their weapons are primarily energy-based, designed for precision rather than destruction. Classic Explorer configuration. They're either peaceful or incredibly naive. Chen almost smiled. It had been 4,000 years since humanity had encountered another intelligent species, and, back then, things had gone very poorly indeed. The Galactic Council had branded them as too aggressive, too dangerous for civilized contact. Humanity had been left alone in their corner of the galaxy to either evolve or destroy themselves. They had chosen a third option. Bring up the historical files on the Kethari, Chen ordered. The holographic display showed detailed information compiled from ancient databases. The Kethari Confederation, peaceful traders, and explorers. Crystalline-based biology, highly advanced in harmonics, and quantum manipulation, known for their philosophy of nonviolence and their refusal to develop military technologies. And now they're asking us for help against something called the Vorthake Horde, Chen mused. Computer, display all available data on the Vorthake. Working. Data found. The Vorthake Horde, biomechanical collective consciousness. Expansionist species that consumes organic matter to fuel growth. Last known activity. Advancing through the Andromeda trade routes, overwhelming all resistance. Chen's eyes narrowed. How many worlds have they consumed? According to intercepted transmissions, approximately 47 inhabited systems in the past galactic year. The command center fell silent. 47 worlds. Billions of sentient beings, possibly trillions, consumed to feed an endless hunger. Admiral, Torres said quietly, should we respond to their request? Chun turned to look at the stars beyond the viewport. 4,000 years ago, humanity had been young and stupid. They had fought with crude chemical rockets and nuclear weapons, thinking themselves mighty when they could barely reach their own moon. The Galactic Council had seen their primitive violence and decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic community. They had been wrong about humanity's dangerousness. They had vastly underestimated it. Open a channel to Earth Command, Chen ordered. Priority 1. The massive holographic display activated, showing the familiar interior of the Terran High Command Center. Fleet Admiral Jackson, Chen's contemporary and oldest friend, appeared on screen from his headquarters deep beneath the surface of Earth. Sarah, he said, his voice carrying easily across the light years through quantum entanglement communicators. I assume this is about our unexpected guests. The Kethari are asking for help, Marcus. Something called the Vorthake Horde is consuming everything in its path. Jackson leaned back in his chair. We've been monitoring the situation through our deep space sensor networks. The energy signatures we're detecting from these bioships are significant. How significant? Each of their larger vessels appears to mass approximately 50 billion tons and generates enough energy to power a small star. They're not just ships, Sarah. They're mobile ecosystems designed for one purpose: consumption and conversion of organic matter. Chen felt a familiar sensation stirring in her chest. It was something that humanity had tried very hard to suppress over the past 4,000 years, something that their enforced isolation had helped them control. But it was still there, waiting. Numbers? She asked. Current estimates suggest a primary fleet of over 10,000 bioships, with support elements numbering in the hundreds of thousands. They've been growing with each world they consume. Chen closed her eyes. 10,000 ships, each the size of a small moon, backed by hundreds of thousands of support vessels. Any conventional military force would be overwhelmed in minutes. What's the Council's response? The usual, Jackson said with disgust. The major powers have retreated to their core systems and activated defensive measures. They're hoping the Horde will consume the Rim territories and then move on to another galaxy. Cowards. Can't really blame them, Sarah. According to our projections, the Vorthake Horde is the single most dangerous military force the galaxy has ever seen. Their bioships can regenerate from almost any damage. They adapt to energy weapons within minutes. And they seem to have an unlimited ability to reproduce. Chen opened her eyes and looked at the Kethari ship hanging in the darkness. Such a delicate, beautiful vessel, designed for exploration and wonder, not for the harsh realities of survival warfare. Marcus, what's the status of the reserves? Jackson's expression grew serious. The reserves, Sarah? We haven't activated the reserves in over 3,000 years. What's their status? Fully operational. The automated systems have been maintaining them since the last activation. Every ship, every weapon system, every soldier. All waiting for the order. Chun walked to the viewport and pressed her palm against the transparent aluminum. Beyond it, she could see the patrol ships of the Terran Defense Fleet. Sleek, deadly vessels that had been designed not for exploration or trade, but for one singular purpose: the complete and total destruction of any threat to human survival. For 1,000 years of isolation. For 1,000 years of development driven not by curiosity or profit, but by the certain knowledge that someday, something would come for them again. And when it did, humanity would be ready. Sarah, Jackson said quietly. If we activate the reserves, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what we've become. The galaxy abandoned us, Marcus. They left us alone in the dark because they thought we were too dangerous. Maybe it's time they learned what dangerous really means. Chin turned back to the command center. Lieutenant Torres, open a channel to the Cathari vessel. Channel open, Admiral. Chin straightened her uniform and composed her features into what she hoped was a reassuring expression. Commander Zuaxthala, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. Your request for assistance has been received and approved. The alien's reply came back almost immediately. Admiral Chun, we are grateful beyond words. The Vorthak horde represents a threat to all life in this galaxy. But I must warn you, their numbers are vast, and their bioships are unlike anything we've ever encountered. Commander, humanity has had 4,000 years to prepare for our return to galactic affairs. I believe we can handle a few organic ships. There was a pause. Then, Zuayaxthala's voice returned, filled with obvious relief. How soon can your forces be deployed? Chun looked at Jackson on the display. He nodded grimly and began entering commands into his console. All reserve fleets are now coming online, Jackson reported. Full activation in 6 hours. Deployment in 12. Chin turned back to the communication channel. Commander Zoaxthala, please transmit all tactical data on the Vorthak horde to our systems. In return, I'm sending you navigation protocols for safe passage through our space. I believe you'll want to witness what happens next. Witness what, Admiral? Chun smiled, and for the first time in 4,000 years, it was not a peaceful expression. The return of humanity to galactic affairs, Commander. I have a feeling it's going to be quite memorable. As alerts began sounding throughout the Terran system, as massive ships began emerging from hidden bases scattered throughout the asteroid belt, as weapons that had slept for millennia awakened and began their startup sequences, one thing became very clear. The galaxy was about to learn the difference between species that had evolved beyond warfare and species that had evolved to master it. The Vorthak horde was about to encounter something it had never faced before, a species that had spent 4,000 years in isolation doing nothing but preparing for war. Commander Zuaxthala watched in stunned silence as the human fleet assembled. What had seemed like empty space around the Terrasol system was suddenly filled with ships emerging from concealment. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. By the eternal harmonies, whispered Navigation Officer Peltaris. Where were they all hiding? The answer became apparent as their sensors adapted to the human technology. Entire asteroids were opening like flowers, revealing massive dreadnoughts nestled within. Space stations that had appeared to be dead rocks suddenly blazed to life with energy signatures that made their detection systems scream warnings. Most disturbing of all, what they had taken for natural planetary rings around the gas giants were actually vast defensive platforms, armed with weapons whose purpose their computers couldn't even begin to classify. Commander, reported Veclin from communications, the humans are requesting that we follow their fleet to observe the engagement. They're asking if we want to see something they call shock and awe. Zyxthala's forearms trembled as she watched the massive human vessels begin moving into formation. Each ship was a monument to warfare, designed with no consideration for beauty or harmony. They were angular, aggressive, covered in weapon pods, and armor plating that spoke of a species that had elevated destruction to an art form. Accept their invitation, she said quietly. But maintain maximum safe distance. The human fleet was unlike anything in the galactic archives. Where other species built ships for multiple purposes, exploration, trade, diplomacy, these vessels had been created for one function only, war. And, as they moved through space in perfect formation, Zyxthala realized that 4,000 years of isolation had not mellowed humanity in the slightest. It had refined them. Admiral Chin's voice came through their communication system as the combined fleet began its journey toward the Vorthak advance fleet. Commander Zyxthala, you'll want to observe from the designated safe zone. What you're about to see represents 4 millennia of human military development. Admiral, I must ask, how many ships do you have? There was a pause. Then, Chin's voice returned with what sounded almost like amusement. Active fleet consists of 12,000 frontline vessels, 40,000 support ships, and approximately 2 million automated defense platforms. The reserve fleets add another 8,000 ships to that total. Zyaxthala felt her crystalline heart skip a beat. 2 million automated defense platforms. Oh, those stay home to guard our territory. What you're seeing now is just our expeditionary force. The Kethari Bridge crew exchanged horrified glances. An expeditionary force of 20,000 ships. Most galactic civilizations didn't have that many vessels in their entire star fleet. As they approached the edge of Kethari space, their sensors detected the Vorth AK advance fleet. 50 massive bioships, each the size of a small moon, accompanied by thousands of smaller support organisms. The bioships pulsed with organic energy, their surfaces writhing with what appeared to be living armor. All ships, this is Admiral Chun, came the voice over the fleet communication channel. Target acquisition is complete. You have permission to engage at will. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations to come. The human ships opened fire simultaneously, and the very fabric of space seemed to tear apart. Energy weapons that operated beyond the visible spectrum painted the darkness with colors that had no names. Projectile weapons fired shells that manipulated gravity itself, creating localized distortions that crushed targets from multiple dimensions at once. But most terrifying of all were the weapons that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Missiles that appeared in multiple places simultaneously. Energy beams that curved through space-time. Projectiles that arrived at their targets before they had been fired. The first Vorth AK bioship to be targeted simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive living mountain of organic armor and biological weapons systems. The next moment, there was nothing but expanding plasma and debris. Impossible, breathed Peltaris. The Vorth AK bioships can regenerate from almost any damage. How did the humans? His question was answered as they watched the second bioship attempt to regenerate after being hit by what appeared to be a relatively minor energy blast. But, instead of healing, the creature began to dissolve. The human weapon hadn't just damaged it, it had infected it with something that prevented regeneration and actively broke down the biological matter. They've weaponized entropy itself, Zyaxthala whispered in horror. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 17 minutes. 50 massive bioships, and their thousands of support organisms were reduced to cosmic dust. Not one human vessel took damage. Not one shot fired by the Vorth AK even reached its intended target. Commander Zyaxthala, Admiral Chen's voice came through their communicators. Preliminary engagement is complete. We're proceeding to the main Horde fleet. Estimated time to contact, 6 hours. Admiral, that was incredible. Your weapons. Oh, those weren't weapons, Chen interrupted. Those were the equivalent of police batons. We wanted to test their capabilities before deploying actual military hardware. The silence on the Kethari Bridge was absolute. Admiral, Zyaxthala managed. If those weren't weapons, what do you call the systems that will engage the main fleet? Tools of war, Commander. You see, humanity learned something during our 4,000 years of isolation. Peace is wonderful, but it only exists when someone is willing and able to enforce it. We became willing, and, as you're about to see, we became very, very able. As the human fleet moved deeper into space, more ships began joining them. These were different from the expeditionary force, larger, more heavily armed, and radiating energy signatures that made the Kethari sensors simply give up trying to analyze them. Commander, Veclin reported, her voice shaking. I'm detecting massive fleet movements from the Terran system. It appears that their entire civilization is mobilizing. How many ships? I can't count them all. The signatures are overlapping. But conservative estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of vessels. Zyaxthala closed her eyes and tried to process what she was seeing. Humanity had been quarantined for 4,000 years because the Galactic Council thought they were too aggressive. But what they had failed to realize was that aggression, when refined and perfected over millennia, didn't become peace. It became something far more terrifying. As they approached the main Vorth AK fleet, Zyaxthala found herself wondering if her desperate gamble had saved the galaxy or doomed it. The humans were clearly capable of destroying the Vorthake horde. But what would happen when they turned their attention to the rest of the galaxy? What had she unleashed? Admiral Chen's voice came through the communicator one final time before they reached the engagement zone. Commander, you might want to record what happens next. I have a feeling the Galactic Council is going to want a very detailed report. About the defeat of the Vorthake? No, Chen said quietly. About the return of humanity to galactic civilization. Because after today, I don't think anyone is going to remember us as the species that was too dangerous for contact. What will they remember you as? Chen's smile was audible in her voice. The species that made dangerous look quaint. Ahead of them, the main Vorthake horde fleet came into view. 10,000 bioships, each larger than the ones they had already destroyed, accompanied by hundreds of thousands of support organisms. It was a sight that had terrorized the galaxy, an unstoppable force that had consumed entire civilizations. Behind them, the human fleet spread out in perfect formation. Hundreds of thousands of ships, carrying weapons and technologies that defied comprehension, crewed by a species that had spent 4,000 years learning to perfect the art of war. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. What happened when an unstoppable force met a species that had spent millennia ensuring that nothing could ever be truly unstoppable? The Vorthake Horde Queen felt the destruction of her advanced fleet like a physical blow. For the first time in her species' existence, 50 of her children had been completely destroyed. Not just damaged, not just wounded, but utterly annihilated in a way that prevented even the possibility of regeneration. From the bridge of her flagship, a bioship so massive it could house entire ecosystems within its living hull, she studied the approaching enemy fleet with growing unease. Her advanced scouts had reported something impossible, a fleet numbering in the hundreds of thousands, crewed by a species that galactic records claimed had been quarantined millennia ago. Analysis, she commanded through bioneural links to her tactical organisms. The response flowed directly into her consciousness. Unknown species. Technology beyond current classification. Weapons operating on principles not found in galactic database. Threat level, undefined. Undefined. In 4,000 years of conquest, the Vorthake had never encountered anything that registered as undefined. Every species had weaknesses. Every technology had limitations. Every fleet had a breaking point. But, as her sensors focused on the approaching human vessels, she began to understand that she was facing something entirely unprecedented. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination, their formations shifting and flowing like a single organism. But, unlike the Vorthake collective consciousness, this was not biological unity. It was something far more sophisticated. Each ship moved independently while maintaining perfect harmony with the whole. Tactical assessment of enemy capabilities, she commanded. Her bioneural network processed the data from the advanced fleet's destruction. Primary weapons appear to manipulate fundamental forces. Secondary weapons demonstrate ability to prevent biological regeneration. Tertiary systems suggest manipulation of space-time itself. Recommendation: immediate withdrawal to core territory. The Horde Queen's massive form pulsed with bioluminescent anger patterns. Withdrawal? The Vorthake horde had never retreated from any enemy. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, the ultimate expression of evolutionary perfection. Prepare all bioships for maximum aggression protocol, she commanded. Deploy the Devourer-class vessels. Across the vast Vorthake fleet, changes began to occur. The largest bioships split open like giant flowers, releasing creatures that defied description. Each devourer was a living world unto itself, capable of consuming entire planets in hours. They had never been defeated, never been stopped, never even been significantly damaged. There were 100 of them. Admiral Chun watched the Vorthake deployment from the bridge of the Dreadnought inevitable conclusion. The massive bioships emerging from the enemy fleet were impressive, she had to admit. Each one was a masterpiece of biological engineering, perfectly adapted for destruction and consumption. Ma'am, reported Captain Rodriguez from the tactical station, enemy fleet is deploying what appear to be planet-killer-class organisms. Energy readings suggest they're capable of consuming stellar mass. Interesting, Chen mused. Fleet Admiral Jackson, are you seeing this? Jackson's voice came through the quantum communicator from his command ship. Confirmed, Sarah? Those are some impressive creatures. I'm almost sorry we're going to have to kill them. Almost. They did consume 47 inhabited worlds. That's a lot of innocent lives to answer for. Chen nodded grimly. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Chen. You are authorized to deploy Omega-class weaponry. Repeat, Omega-class authorization is granted. Across the human fleet, weapons systems that had been held in reserve began to activate. These were not the police batons that had destroyed the advanced fleet. These were the tools that humanity had developed for enemies that posed existential threats. The first Omega weapon to fire was a device that had no official name. Humanity's scientists simply called it the question mark because its effects defied explanation. When it fired, one of the massive Devourer bioships simply stopped. Not destroyed, not damaged, but frozen in a bubble of altered time where seconds stretched into millennia. The second weapon created what appeared to be a hole in space itself. Not a black hole, something far stranger. Reality simply ended at a specific point, and anything that touched that point ceased to exist on any level that mattered. The third weapon did something that made even the human crews uncomfortable. It convinced a bioship that it had never existed in the first place, causing it to retroactively remove itself from reality. But it was the fourth weapon that truly demonstrated the extent of human military development. It fired what appeared to be pure mathematics, equations given physical form that rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in a localized area. The targeted bioship found itself subject to new rules of existence that made life itself impossible. Within minutes, half of the Devourer-class bioships had been eliminated by weapons that operated beyond the normal understanding of warfare. The Horde Queen felt genuine fear for the first time in her existence. Full retreat, she commanded. All ships, maximum velocity withdrawal. But the humans had anticipated this response. Interdiction fields active, reported Captain Rodriguez. Enemy fleet is locked in local space. No escape possible. Commander Zoyaxthala watched in horrified fascination as the most powerful military force in known galactic history was systematically dismantled by weapons that seemed to operate more like natural disasters than traditional armaments. Commander, whispered Peltaris, what have we done? What have we awakened? The question was answered as Admiral Chen opened a fleet-wide communication channel that somehow reached every ship in the engagement zone, human, Cathari, and Vorthake alike. Attention Vorthake Horde. Chen's voice cut through the chaos of battle. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. You have consumed 47 inhabited worlds and murdered trillions of innocent beings. Humanity hereby sentences you to extinction. The Horde Queen tried to respond, tried to negotiate, tried to communicate anything that might prevent what was clearly about to happen. But the humans weren't interested in discussion. They were interested in making a point. What followed could barely be called a battle. It was more like a demonstration, a practical exhibition of what 4,000 years of enforced isolation had done to a species that had been deemed too dangerous for civilized contact. The humans deployed weapons that attacked on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical destruction, temporal manipulation, dimensional warfare, reality revision. They fought as if the very concept of impossible had been deleted from their vocabulary. When it was over, nothing remained of the Vorthake horde except expanding clouds of ionized gas, and the lingering distortions where space-time itself had been used as a weapon. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system one final time. Fleet action complete. All enemy forces eliminated. No casualties sustained. Commander Zoyaxthala stared at the emptiness where the most feared military force in galactic history had existed moments before. Admiral Chen, she managed. The galaxy owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. Actually, Commander, Chen replied, humanity doesn't want repayment. We want something else entirely. What? We want to talk. It's been 4,000 years since we've had a proper conversation with our galactic neighbors. I think it's time we discuss the future of this galaxy. As the massive human fleet began to reorganize itself, Zoyaxthala realized that the Vorthake horde had been the least of the galaxy's problems. The real question now was what humanity intended to do with its obvious technological superiority. She was about to find out that humans, for all their military might, still preferred to solve problems with words when possible. They had just wanted to make sure that everyone understood what would happen if words weren't enough. 3 months after the complete annihilation of the Vorthake horde, representatives from every major galactic civilization gathered in the neutral space of the Centauri station. It was the largest diplomatic assembly in galactic history, and everyone present knew that they were witnessing a fundamental shift in the balance of power. Commander Zaxthala stood near the observation deck, watching as human ships maintained a respectful distance from the station while still making their presence unmistakably clear. The Terran fleet formations were works of art, precise, powerful, and radiating the quiet confidence of a military force that had never known defeat. The Galactic Council recognizes Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force, announced the speaker, a member of the ancient ethereal race that had served as mediators for millennia. Admiral Chun approached the central podium with the easy gait of someone completely comfortable with being the most dangerous person in the room. At 97 years old, she moved with the vitality of someone half her age, another example of human technological advancement that unsettled many of the gathered species. Honored representatives, Chun began, her voice carrying easily through the massive chamber. For 1,000 years ago, your predecessors decided that humanity was too dangerous for inclusion in galactic civilization. Today, I stand before you to discuss whether that assessment was correct. The chamber fell silent. Every being present had seen the tactical reports from the Vorthake engagement. The humans had eliminated the galaxy's greatest threat without suffering a single casualty, using weapons that defied explanation and tactics that suggested a complete mastery of warfare. The Galactic Council wishes to express its gratitude for humanity's intervention. The speaker continued carefully. The Vorthake horde represented a threat to all life in this galaxy. Yes, they did, Chun agreed. And that threat existed precisely because the major galactic powers chose to retreat to their core systems rather than confront it. 47 worlds died while you debated whether the problem might solve itself. The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. However, Chun continued, humanity doesn't wish to dwell on past failures. We're here to discuss the future. Council member Thexalone of the Mole Theory, Hegemony, leaned forward. Admiral, your species possesses military capabilities that exceed anything in our historical records. The galaxy wishes to know, what are your intentions? Chun smiled, and, for the first time since the engagement, it was a genuinely warm expression. Our intentions are exactly the same as they were 4,000 years ago. We want to explore. We want to learn. We want to trade and share knowledge and experience the wonder of a galaxy filled with diverse, intelligent life. But your weapons, began another representative, are necessary tools, Chun interrupted. You see, honored representatives, humanity learned something during our isolation. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of justice. And justice, unfortunately, sometimes requires the credible threat of overwhelming force. Commander Zaxthala found herself nodding in agreement. The humans had demonstrated something that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes the most peaceful species were those that were best prepared for war. The Council recognizes that human military capabilities are extensive, the speaker said carefully. However, there are concerns about the integration of such a powerful military force into existing galactic structures. Chun's expression hardened slightly. Let me address those concerns directly. Humanity has no interest in conquest. We have no desire to rule over other species or impose our will on galactic civilization. But we also have no intention of allowing genocidal forces like the Vorthake to go unchallenged while peaceful species debate response protocols. She paused and looked around the chamber. 4,000 years ago, you quarantined us because you thought we were too violent for civilized society. You were wrong. We weren't too violent. We were insufficiently violent. We fought with nuclear weapons and chemical rockets, thinking that made us dangerous. But true strength isn't about being willing to hurt others. It's about being able to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as representatives conferred with their advisors. Chun waited patiently, her hands clasped behind her back. Council member Vexiari of the Crystalline Concordat spoke up. Admiral, what safeguards can humanity offer to ensure that your military capabilities will not be used against peaceful civilizations? Chen smiled again, this time with genuine amusement. The same safeguards that have protected human civilians for the past 4,000 years. Our military exists to defend, not to aggress. We have fought exactly one external conflict in 4 millennia, against the Vorthake horde, and only because they posed an existential threat to innocent life. But your weapons, Vexiari pressed, are designed to end conflicts quickly and decisively, Chen interrupted. Every weapon in the human arsenal exists to minimize casualties and collateral damage while maximizing the likelihood that potential aggressors will choose negotiation over violence. The best weapons, Counselor, are the ones that never have to be fired because their existence prevents the need for their use. Commander ZYX Thala stepped forward. As the first galactic representative to make contact with humanity, she had been granted special speaking privileges. Honored Council, she began, I have observed humanity closely for the past 3 months. Their actions demonstrate not the bloodthirsty nature we feared, but rather a sophistication in the use of force that surpasses our understanding. They eliminated the Vorthake threat completely and efficiently, then immediately returned to peaceful operations. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Humanity doesn't seek to rule the galaxy. They seek to protect it. There is a significant difference. The debate continued for hours, touching on trade agreements, territorial boundaries, technology sharing, and mutual defense pacts. But the underlying theme was clear. The galaxy needed to adjust to the reality that humanity had returned, and this time they were not the primitive species that had been quarantined millennia ago. Finally, the speaker called for a formal vote. The question before the Council is whether to extend full membership in galactic civilization to the human species. All in favor. The vote was unanimous. Admiral Chun accepted the decision with characteristic grace. Humanity is honored to rejoin galactic civilization. We look forward to contributing to the peace and prosperity of all species. As the formal ceremony concluded, Chen made her way to where Commander Zoyaxthala was standing. Commander, Chen said warmly, I want to personally thank you for your courage in approaching our system. Without your intervention, the Vorthake might have consumed the entire Rim territory before we became aware of the situation. Admiral, I must ask, what happens now? Humanity possesses capabilities that could dominate the galaxy. How can we be certain that power won't corrupt? Chen considered the question seriously. Commander, power doesn't corrupt. Unchecked power corrupts. Humanity's military might is balanced by our democratic institutions, our philosophical commitments, and our genuine belief that diversity makes civilization stronger. But, most importantly, it's balanced by the knowledge that we're not alone in the galaxy. I don't understand. For 4,000 years, we prepared for the worst-case scenario, that we would have to defend ourselves against an entire galaxy. But that's not the situation we face now. We're part of a galactic community again, which means we're no longer alone. And species that aren't alone don't need to be as dangerous as species that are. Chen looked out at the stars visible through the observation deck. We spent 4,000 years becoming the ultimate defenders. Now we get to spend the next 4,000 years learning to be something better, partners. As the human fleet began to disperse to their new patrol routes throughout galactic space, one thing became clear to every observer. The galaxy had gained not just powerful protectors, but thoughtful guardians who understood that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when destruction was necessary and when it was not. The age of humanity's isolation was over. The age of human guardianship had begun. And, for the first time in galactic history, aggressive species throughout the galaxy would think twice before threatening peaceful civilizations, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, human ships patrolled with sensors always active and weapons always ready. The galaxy had found its shepherds, and the wolves had learned to fear the night.